Just a Bit of Bread by Nyan Sanketsu, Chapter 15. Do you feel in charge? I made a promise. I swore to her I would never use this part of me. Never, ever again. But you know what? Emerald ain't here right now, and I'm angry. Earlier, you told me you like being in charge. Well, do you feel in charge now? An awakening. Do you feel in charge? Emerald hurt. Perhaps it would be better to say everything hurt, everything except her legs. She couldn't feel those, not anymore, but everything else hurt. Her arms, her face, her chest, even the physical act of breathing proved a drain by itself. Everything was blurry. She was vaguely aware of being carried. That only made her wound ache all the more. She whimpered curling inside on herself. She didn't understand. Why was she bleeding out like this? Blast it all. She'd had her aura up. It didn't make sense. She'd been looking right at Rowan, yet somehow she'd been shot. She was missing something here. But what? It's fine. You're gonna be fine. I'll get you to a hospital. She looked up, realizing just who was carrying her. In doing so, she saw something else. You're glowing. Naruto frowned down at his shimmering sleeves, which were indeed shimmering a faint flickering shade of gold. It cut a stark contrast with the literal blue fire spitting from his eyes. He looked absolutely livid, pulsing veins pounding on either side of his face. His jaw clenched so hard she could have heard his teeth cracking. She looked down, saw blood on his hands, frowned. What did you do? What I had to. He walked just a little faster. That's not important right now. Emerald squinted up at him, trying to place the curious expression he wore. She craned her neck, trying to look back, trying to see what he wrote. She saw blood, and she saw bodies. Blood that didn't concern her. They'd seen and done worse back in Bakugo. No, it was the look he wore that alarmed her. Why? Why did he look so ashamed? It's all right, he promised, rambling on. I'll fix this. She owned she could barely hear him now. Fix everything. Just hang on. Emerald tried to speak, tried to reassure him. All she managed was a gasp. Her body failed her, and she fell back into the black. How did the test go? Cinder considered the footage as she held up her scroll. Well enough, I suppose. She hummed as she watched it play out in lifetime from a hidden camera. While I'm still uncertain if that girl's maiden arm. Other project performed marvelously. A small smile plucked at the corner of her mouth. Be sure and thank our mutual friend, Watts. Naturally, the voice on the other end chimed. I'll keep in touch. Cinder held up the fruits of their labor, smiling at the single black dust round in her palm. At a glance, it looked relatively harmless. Some might say it was without a weapon to fire it. It was without a weapon to fire it, but it wasn't now, was it? This was so much more than a mere bullet. She turned it end over end in her grasp, admiring as one might a fine jewel. In a sense, it was. Roman hadn't been the one to wound that good fool of a girl. He lacked both the ability and the callousness to maim in a cold blood. He'd simply been a necessary distraction, their scapegoat, while a certain someone took the shot. The victims, as Sustrain's partner vented his rage upon them. Roman and Neil might even survive if they received adequate medical attention in time. They were a necessary sacrifice to see what he was capable of. She'd learn much just by watching them. A pound of flesh, indeed. She winced a little as she regarded the grisly scene. That was certainly vicious enough. Such a shame he hadn't stayed to make certain they were dead. Mercury would have to finish what he'd started. She disliked loose ends. Emerald would likely live thanks to his haste. The sniper hadn't aimed to kill, only to wound. Her dad would be an annoyance, to be sure, but only if she was truly the maiden. Pale fingers closed around the round, cradling it gently. Here at last, her smile turned cruel. This will change the world. An aura-piercing bullet, a singular round that struck its target and dissolved once its bloody work was done, leaving no trace behind. Not the first of its kind, and certainly not the last. Really, she'd have to thank their mutual friend for this. All that pride and prattle aside, his research was quite potent. She could see it now. Weapons that mowed down huntsmen heedless of aura, bullets that butchered huntresses in droves. Once they manufactured this en masse, the world would be theirs. And who better to test it on than that annoying slip of a girl? Everyone has their price, Cinder murmured to herself as she watched Team Nebula hurtle past her window. I wonder what yours is. Money? No. Her tongue rolled over her lips. Look at them. You have more than enough of that. Power. A thief has no need for such things. Love? No, her brow darkened as she watched them talk hurriedly with Adam and Leah, then race off campus. After a moment's pause, the two fathers hurried after them. You want to be loved, adored. You want their respect. You crave their adulation. Her brow grew stormy. Friendship bonds. That, she scoffed, that is what makes you weak. On a whim, she turned back to the footage and considered it anew, and in doing so, she saw something there she hadn't before. Naruto had returned to the scene of the crime, yet Emerald was nowhere to be seen. No doubt he delivered her to the first hospital he could find. He'd proven his agility before. No matter, she could always strike at her there. It mattered not. Wait, what was he doing? Her brow creased in a frown. Roman lay sprawled out on the tarmac where he'd left him, bleeding from his wounds. Yet for all that, he was still alive. His lips moved, and Naruto spoke something in turn. He made a curt slashing motion with his arm that had the dying man flinching. She couldn't hear what was said. Cinder frowned and magnified the feed to make sense of it. The footage was grainy at best, and it lacked audio, forcing her to strain her eyes. Even then, she couldn't read their lips. As she looked on, Roman raised a trembling finger, dipped it in his own blood, and began to move it on the dry ground, slowly at first, but with increasing speed. So too did he write. A single word was revealed to her. Golden eyes bulged. C-I-N. Cinder, horror dawned. He'd written her name. That traitor. Boss. Mercury's voice trickled through her earpiece. What now? Naruto's gaze snapped towards the hidden camera, to Mercury with his rifle, blocks away. Eyes like a winter storm stared into the lens. A lone finger rose and slashed across his throat in a less than subtle gesture. Then he vanished in a whirl of golden light. Mercury swore softly. Cinder's hand slammed against her earpiece. Pull back at once. Get out of there. A squeal of static answered her. Mercury, respond. And he did, but not at all in the way she wished. Her minion loosed a short, agonized cry, the kind of noise a dying man might make. An awful crack filled the air, accompanied by the sound of broken bones and rent flesh. For a moment, she could have sworn she heard him beg for mercy, plead for an end, beg him to stop, stop, stop. The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched on into 3 seconds. 6, 9 now. Against her bitter judgment, Cinder swallowed once more and spoke. Mercury. A low familiar growl rose in her ear. Mercury can't come to the phone right now. He's indisposed at the moment. Panic flared in Cinder's heart. She ripped the earpiece from her ear, flung it to the floor, and smashed down on it. Then she incinerated it for good measure. This wasn't happening. She reached back and pinched her left arm, just to be sure. A spasm of pain shot across her skin. No, not some fever dream, something she'd imagined, perhaps unlikely. She could handle this. He had no proof, and only the word of a criminal. What could he do? Still, her heart skipped a beat as she cleared her scroll's history. At the moment it did, she slammed the device under her pillow. Why was she panicking? He couldn't prove anything. No, he wouldn't act without evidence. No one could implicate her. She was safe, secure. Even if he acted against her in such a manner, the law would immediately set itself against him. He wouldn't dare risk his precious second life in such a manner. Yes, she was safe. She was secure, and no one was the wiser. The door opened behind Cinder with a soft creak of rusted hinges. It did not slam, did not crunch, didn't rattle in its frame. Someone opened it, someone closed it. Nothing more. Somehow, that was worse than any abrupt entrance they might have made. A strange heat suffused the back of her neck. She turned slowly, already knowing who she would find there. Still, she refused to believe it, just as she refused to acknowledge the icy fingers running down her back. How did he get here so quickly? The answer supplied itself readily. His semblance, of course. He could teleport to any marked location. He had all the time in the world to set up one in Beacon. Had he marked her room? If so, why? Was he already suspicious of her? Turn around. Her legs betrayed her and obeyed his command. Don't get up on my account. Naruto eased the door shut behind him. Make yourself comfortable. His hand passed over the lock and did something to it, for the circular sputtered and died at his touch. Cracks spread across the wood where his fingers graced it. Rust in the metal handle of her door as it wedged itself in place, almost as if it had been decayed. Had he always been able to do that? Worse still was his appearance. His clothes were spattered with blood, and his eyes were no longer blue. Not anymore. They were red. The awful slits of a fox masquerading as a man. His tail was wrapped around his waist, coiled so tightly as to resemble a golden lash. His ears were stiff atop his head, perked with anger, yet for all that, he didn't explode, he did not shout, nor did he scream. "What's that there?" Her eyes flickered to the dust mound left upon the windowsill in her haste. Her fingers closed around it and melted it to dust. Losing one round didn't matter. Once the formula was perfected, there would be dozens like it, hundreds of thousands. The fools had no idea what awaited them. They needed only time. He couldn't prove anything. She just had to hold her tongue. "Nice siblings you got there." She didn't like the way he said that. "Did you need something?" Naruto didn't respond, not at first. At length he spoke. "Sit down, Cinder." Fall tilted her head just so, ribbon tresses concealing her left eye. "If it's all the same to you, I think I'll stand. You don't seem to understand." His eyes pulsed at her barbed retort, almost glowing twin coals within his skull. "I said, sit." Something in his voice whipped away any concepts of resistance into her mind. Her body betrayed her, and she obeyed. A frown creased her face. What was that? It was as if her world had gone blank. For a moment, a feeling of strange dizziness fell over her, and she shook her head once to master herself. Naruto sat on the bed opposite her. The mattress creaked a little under his weight, yet still he did not shout. "Earlier today," he frowned a little, mastered himself, and continued, "I took a pound of flesh from someone. Several someones, really. You see." The clawed fingers steeped themselves together, drumming restless against one another. "They hurt someone very dear to me, so I hurt them in return." He raised a bloody digit, frowned, then crumpled at it with the cloth. "Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, evil for evil." His head inclined a fraction of an inch. "The doctor says she might be paralyzed, you know. That bullet passed dangerously close to her spine. It's a bit touch and go at the moment." Cinder schooled her face into a regretful mask. "A tragedy." "It is." His head bobbed. "But they weren't the source of the hit. Someone else gave the order." Her heart skipped a beat. "Do you have any idea who it might be?" His eyes fastened to hers. "I have my suspicions." "Why bring them to me?" She took a chance. "Would be better if you told—" "Quiet!" There it was again, that feeling. Her lips sealed shut of their own accord. She couldn't speak, even as her mind bleated in confusion. "Now the question you need to ask yourself is this." Naruto leaned forward, planting both hands on either side of himself, even as he leaned back. "If I was willing to maim the hired hands responsible for this dastardly deed, what might I do to the schemer responsible for said scheme?" Cinder didn't answer. She physically couldn't. Naruto waved a hand. "You may speak." It was like a cord came out of her mouth, freeing her tongue. She gulped. "Kill them, I suppose." "Kill them!" He blinked once, then shook his head. "No." Now it was her turn to blink. "No." "No." Naruto bobbed his head in agreement. "Death is easy, quick, final." He pressed two fingers to the right side of his head and mimed a gun. Bang! One and done. You don't learn from death. It's part of the reason I refuse to kill you, see? Cinder didn't like where this was going. She tried to stand. "Didn't I tell you to sit?" Her legs obeyed like a mindless puppet, even as her mind shrieked in defiance. What witchcraft was this? It wasn't fear that compelled her to obey. Yes, she was afraid, but she hadn't reached that stage of wild, numbing terror yet. Despite that, she still found herself beheld to him. How was he controlling her? Confused? Naruto tilted his head, regarding her now with a sad smile. "Don't be. I'm going to enlighten you in a moment." The aspired maiden eyed him weirdly. "You may not know this, but some years ago I acquired a certain semblance from Bakuo. Nasty thing," he tutted, shaking his head. "I killed a man and stole it from him in a moment of weakness. It's something I swore never to use on my friends and family. I swore a blood oath that I'd never use it for evil. However," his head rose, "I never said I wouldn't use it against evil." She needed to stalk him. Think, find a way out of this. What kind of semblance? Mind control. Ripped from the body of one Jax Astreas. A rusty chuckle filled the air between the two of them. He fancied himself the next king of Vacuo. He wasn't. At the end, he was just a sad, strange little man who didn't know his limits. His sister wasn't much better. I broke my rule for them, you know. They died screaming. It was the casual way he said it that terrified her. Mind control. That was myth. Naruto was speaking slowly, restating himself. She knew, in truth, she would have preferred his wrath, his rage. She knew how to fight mindless berserkers, not schemers, not the killers. This This was something new, as if she were staring back at a male version of herself, at someone who wouldn't be tricked or deceived, a warrior who couldn't be led around by the nose. She didn't much like it. Does this have a point? It does. His reply proved cutting. I think you know what it is. A bit of sweat ran down her brow, only to fizzle out into steam. And what do you think I've done? I think you orchestrated that hit on me and Emerald. Here at last, a spark of rage pushed through his icy facade as he bared his teeth at her. I think you're up to something. He couldn't say what. I think that bullet you just incinerated is going to be a problem, and I know you need to be dealt with before you cause even more trouble. You're accusing me of this? A nervous peal of laughter escaped her. I've done nothing wrong. Is that your final answer? There was a low undercurrent to his voice just then, as though some great beast were speaking with him. Choose carefully now. I didn't even have to use this semblance on Roman. Naruto shook his head. He told me a great deal, even begged for mercy after I cut him. He wept and wailed, offered up everything he could. Some criminal he was. We're supposed to have class, you know. Fine, the jig was up. How was it? Living a normal life? She spat in his face. Are you wiser now? Did you enjoy it? She wasn't prepared for his laughter. I did, he guffed. But if this is what it gets me, then I'm done with it. You know, they say there's no honor among thieves. His gaze rose once more to meet hers, heavy with the weight of years. But really, there is. There are rules, you see. You just broke all of them, which is why I wanted to thank you. She edged back, dreading the gleam in his eyes. For what exactly? For reminding me that it's not wrong to use these gifts, not to spread his arms outwards, eliciting a flinch from her. Yet still, he didn't attack. I was born with the ability to take semblances, yet I felt ashamed for it. Why? I was given this gift. I should use it now. Why are you telling me all this? Because I know you'll never tell anyone after all. You won't remember anything in a minute. His eyes sharpened. Mind control, they call it. Ha! He barked out another laugh, harsh and angry. It's not quite so simple as that. In truth, it's more a contest of wills. Care to pit yours against mine? An awful pressure bloomed just behind Cinder's temples. Without warning, she grimaced and touched a hand to her forehead. Stop that! Naruto ignored her demand. Tell me the truth. She should answer. No, resist. The truth. The truth. Cinder recoiled with a start, crying out in pain as his mind pressed against hers from all sides. It was a slow, insidious thing, nothing like the direct control he'd utilized against her before. Oil and water, smothering her thoughts, weighing them down. She felt her very sense of self being eroded. She pushed back against and tried to grapple with it. It was to no avail. His will was implacable. Ice took her fire. Her flames were choked and strangled. She needed to move, needed to act. Cinder surged to her feet, not to attack, but to run, escape, fly, flee, before it was too late. She slammed past Naruto and threw herself at the window. The glass held as her body crashed into it, sending her tumbling to the floor. She thrust upright to drive a fist through it, uncaring as broken shards rent her arm. She tried to climb through. Naruto didn't bat an eyelash behind her. Kneel! His command hit her like a physical force. She made it all of a single step before that word slammed her down to the floor. I won't yield to you, she spat up to him. Never! I am in charge here. My hand settled on her shoulder. Do you feel in charge? You have no proof, no evidence of anything, and this gives you power over me? Strange, strong hands reached around, pulling her away from the window, back into the dorm. You thought you were strong? He held her close, heedless of her struggles, and you were. Until now. Cinder reared back and headbutted him with all her might. His only response was to spin her around. She met his eyes. Mistakes were made. His gaze devoured hers, dark into light. What are you? Formerly a shinobi, then a thief. Now, just a student. Here to end you. She tried to speak, but all that emerged was a keening whine as his mind pressed down on hers again. The semblance, it went beyond anything she'd felt before. It took her mind and broke it down bit by bit, brick by brick. He pulled her thoughts apart and read them as one might an open book. No page was spared, no thought overlooked, and no plot ignored. He saw it all, pushed through her barriers, knew all her secrets. He didn't stop there. He picked her apart, deconstructed her very sense of identity, and kept going. With each passing moment, she slipped away. Salem had to be warned. She must be told. You're pure evil. I am unnecessary evil. And you? Naruto's right hand came up, cupping her cheek. You are nothing. You're going to tell me everything I want to know. His voice all but vibrated with the weight of his stolen semblance now. Clawed fingers tightened, biting into her face. Every plot, every scheme, everything. And then, his head tilted, when I'm done with you, Emerald always wanted a pet. And like any good pet, Cinder shrieked as a fresh spasm of pain racked her mind. Naruto's mind crashed down on hers like a meteor. You need to be trained. Now. Obey. Her will shattered like so much glass. Golden eyes glazed over. Yes, master. Previews. Emerald wouldn't wake up. I'll save you. I will. Don't worry. Blake tugged at his sleeve. Are you alright? Blank red eyes regarded her. Of course I'm alright. I've never felt so alive. Pyrrha winced. That's what worries me. Come, let me show you what true resolve is. Aspen sighed. You must have lost yourself to this power. I won't. It's the other way around, you know? You see, I understand now. I've held back for so long, and the people I loved suffered for it. No more. Not one more. Maria whistled. Right. He's scary when he's angry. Freya nodded once. Agreed. Adam took one look at Cinder and winced. What did you do to her? What I had to do. Come along, Cinder. Yes, master. Nice semblance you got there. Think I'll take it. End of chapter 15. Just a Bit of Bread by Neon Sangetsu, chapter 16. Speak of the devil. See no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. But evil still occurs. Why is that? Why do the wicked prosper? Why do the good falter? Why? A grieving partner. Speak of the devil. Sorry, I'm late. Miss me? Emerald Sustrai didn't open her eyes. Somehow that hurt Naruto more than her silence ever could. Once she would have retorted with a snappy quip, rolled her eyes, slapped his shoulder. Now she did none of those things. Nothing at all. She just laid there, alive, yet not alive, little more than a shell of her former self, but enough that she was laid up in bed wearing that awful gown, yet the indignity of being unable to do anything, to watch as the doctors fussed over her. It was maddening. The steady blip of her heart monitor droned on and on, a steady beep, beep, beep that confirmed her vitals. Nothing more. I know, he muttered to himself, slumping a little in the chair. I shouldn't be moping around. There's work to be done, but I just want to check in. A frown marred his face. I miss you. He looked down, wringing his hands. It's not the same without you here. Had her eyes twitched just now, or was he imagining things? It felt like he was grabbing at straws. Get better soon, you hear? His voice nearly broke with emotion. There's still so much I want to show you or tell you. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. He hung his head. And I will, he muttered. Once you wake up. Aspen had spared no expense. He'd brought in the finest doctors from every corner of Remnant. Secretly, of course, it wouldn't do for Salem to catch on. Each assured them that, aside from her fluctuating aura, Emerald was the very picture of health. That ghastly bullet had been extracted from her long ago. Ironwood was even now trying to unlock its secrets on his flagship. A bullet that pierced aura was bad enough, but it had clearly done something more to Emerald. They just didn't know what. Without those answers, she wouldn't wake. He tried everything, pouring his horror into her, using his life force to burden hers. All for naught. She didn't even twitch. I'll save you. In a sudden pang of desperation, Naruto reached out and laid his hand over hers. Her fingers were so cold. I will, he swore. Don't worry. A sudden epiphany hit him as his palm traced Emerald's. If he didn't have the right tools for the job, then he just needed to find them, didn't he? Surely there was a healing semblance out there somewhere. The human soul could accomplish incredible things, and he held the keys to unlocking it. For him, it would be merely a matter of trial and error, but to save her, he'd have to go back, become that thing again. He didn't want to go back. He'd given it up, reformed. He had risen above the temptations of its semblance and became a better person for it. Unbidden, he recalled a memory. With great power comes great responsibility. You mustn't lose yourself. I won't, Aspen. It's the other way around, you know. You see, I understand now. I've held back for so long, and my loved ones suffer for it. No more. Not one more. His teeth clenched until he felt a tooth crack in the back of his jaw. It healed a moment later. For her sake, his hand clasped hers anew. I'll fix this, he whispered. I swear on my soul, I won't let it consume me. He wasn't sure how long he sat there at her bedside, pondering things. Eventually, someone caught his sleeve and tugged at it. Are you all right? Belatedly, Naruto remembered that he wasn't alone. Right, of course he wasn't. How silly of him to forget. Everyone had come to see her, even Adam's team. I'm fine, Blake. He stood slowly in like a puppet severed from its strings, and plastered a smile to his face. Of course, I'm all right. I've never felt so alive. And black-red eyes regarded her. Why do you ask? And it was true. He knew what to do. It was all so clear to him now. I'm just going to go for a little walk. Pyrrha winced just a touch. That's what worries me. Maria whistled. Right, you're scary when you get angry. Freya nodded once. Agreed. Scary. They hadn't seen Scary, but he wouldn't be showing them. His wrath lay elsewhere. Now wait just a second. Maria must have read his face too, because the revitalized Reaper grabbed his arm before he could rise. Whatever you're thinking, don't. Bad idea, even for you. Her fingers tightened on his arm and held fast. I know you're angry. I know it hurts. I know you want to scream, but this isn't the way. If you do this, there will be no going back. Silver eyes jeweled into his. Trust me, I know. Naruto patted her head once and shook free. I'm sorry. It's already too late. Blake stepped up beside him. We're going with you. He ran on her with a hiss. No, you're not. Pyrrha joined her. Yes, we are. You will not. His voice boomed with thunder, so much that they physically sat down in the face of his fury. Something deep inside Naruto shied away from their startled expressions. It hurt him to frighten them that badly, but he refused to use semblance on them. There were some lines he wasn't willing to cross, even now, so he ignored their cries. Cinder. Behind him, a shadow stiffened. Yes, master. Ilya frowned a little. Wait, master, since when does she call you that? Naruto didn't deign to look at the frightened faunus. This junior fellow you mentioned earlier, does his gang have semblances? Glassy golden eyes regarded him for a brief moment before she nodded. She didn't resist in the least. He hadn't left enough of her mind to resist his questions. Anything I can use? Cinder told him. Of course, she had absolutely no say in the matter, and the world wouldn't miss a few gangsters. As far as he was concerned, he'd be doing the world a favor. Adam took one look at her and winced. What did you do to her? What I had to do, he grunted. Come along, Cinder. She shuffled after him. Yes, master. He knew just where to start. Junior ran for his life. He fled as he'd never fled from anything before in his life, all but throwing himself through the club to escape. The club, not his, not anymore. Gasping for air, he vaulted a bloody table, flung his body over a pair of corpses, and slammed towards the door. Scarlet shoes, they'd once been black, slapped against the floor. Behind him, he heard a softer tread, lighter but no less dangerous for it. So too did he hear the sounds of slaughter that followed in his wake. Senseless, single-minded spite at its finest, and it didn't make the lick of sense. All his men gone, the twins gone, cut down in cold blood by that freaking fire bitch. Why would she betray him? He didn't know. She just walked in and started killing. Call him a coward, call him a craven, call him by his real name. It didn't matter. He wasn't sticking around to find out why. No arrest, no questions, just single-minded slaughter. Miltia and Melanie just didn't last 10 seconds, even as within the first 10 seconds he supposed that was a mercy. And so Hei Shang ran behind him. He heard it all. She was tearing through his body like a blender, ripping them apart. A sword of glass flashed out among the neon lights, pinning his foot to the floor. He recoiled and clutched it. Her hand clutched his throat. Why are you doing this? She smiled as she sashayed forward, and that smile was blank, vapid thing indeed. Because my master told me to. Something in his soul quailed. Master? What master? This bitch answered to someone. Junior tore his foot free, limped away, and flung the doors open. Someone was waiting for him there. A hand shot out, struck Junior's chest, and sent him stumbling backwards. Cinder pulled up a chair behind him. He all but stumbled into it. Don't run now. A low growl pierced the silence. We have so much to discuss. The young man before him looked calm. Too calm. Blood splattered whiskered cheeks dimpled in a friendly smile. Yet for all that, his eyes were red and glassy. Junior saw the bodies behind him. Panic bleated, and he tried to rise from his chair. A dagger slammed down, nailing his thigh to the wooden frame. A scream tore out of him, only to find itself muffled against the back of his palm. Something in him shriveled, and his very life force slowly sapping away beneath the touch of those clawed fingers. They fell away at least, leaving him wasted and gasping for air, mentally and physically exhausted. It was all he could do to raise his gaze. His mind gibbered in wild dismay. "You're kidding me, right? Why is she listening to you?" Naruto flicked a long look over Cinder's shoulder. In a single seamless movement, he pivoted. "Cinder," the shell of the woman perked up. "Yes." "Sit." Her legs folded beneath her, and she landed on her knees, tucking her knees beneath her. Naruto walked to her and held out his hand. A paw. Her palm slapped into his. Naruto hummed in appreciation. "Good girl." Oh gods, he wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. Junior whimpered, "Just a little. What do you want from me?" "Your life, for starters." The blonde turned to face him once more. His smile would have slain a Shni. "I'm cleaning house." Keen eyes focused on him, burning like twin coals in his skull. "Nice semblance you got there." His head cocked just so. "Cinder said it helps you heal faster. Think I'll take it for a start. As for the rest," his lips pursed into a thin line, "you won't be around to see it. No point in telling you for what it's worth." "I'm not sorry for this," Junior whimpered. "No, wait, please, I can help you. A hand closed around his face, and his words peaked into a reedy scream. "Previews." "Someone needs to talk to him." Blake leaned back on her cot and buried her face into a book. "Not it." Pyrrha studied her shoes with single-minded intent, refusing to utter a word. Maria sighed. "Kids these days." Your body or no, her mind was still very much that of an adult. She'd seen her fair share of madness, and this... Nope, not having it. Someone had to set him straight before it was too late. "Let me show you what true resolve is." "You're not going to stop me?" "No." Ironwood considered him for a long moment. "I hope you know what you're doing." "So do I, James." "Dear boy." Pale fingers flicked through the smoke. "Don't be so naive. Believe we may be able to help one another." Naruto scoffed at her. "You have nothing I want. How many semblances do you intend to take?" "Enough." "You're a slave to Ospen, boy. You just don't realize it." Blue eyes flicked up and down. "You know nothing about me. On the contrary, I know everything. I lost my sister to his machinations." End of chapter 16.